Hi, my name is Stephanie Sawyer, and I'm really looking forward to working with the Khan Academy. As a math teacher for about 15 years, I understand the challenges of finding good content and writing good content. And with the internet, and anybody can post anything, this could often be a challenge. So I found a few items that I thought we could look at and talk about whether they're good or not so good. So here I started. This is an example of a low-level item that is good. It's geared towards third or fourth graders, I believe. It says, a game in a PE class requires that students work in teams of 3 to carry a giant earth ball from one side of the field to the other. And then there's a chart that shows each class, kindergarten through third grade, and the number of students. And the question asks, which class has exactly enough students to play the game with no students left over? So this is a really good item because it's clearly written to a standard that is about assessing whether or not a student knows about multiples. But instead of just asking, find the multiple of 3, or what is a multiple of 3, it's a very rich context. It's something a kid might be interested in reading. And interestingly enough, about 78% of the students who took this chose the correct answer, which would be third grade. And so the context didn't vary the question. So I think this is a great example of a low-level question for that reason. My second example is an example of an intermediate level question. This is from the grade 10 released FCAT, like the last item was also from FCAT. They really have a lot of good items. This item was geared towards grade 10, and it reads, Highland Park is located between 2 parallel streets, Walker Street and James Avenue. The park faces Walker Street and is bordered by 2 brick walls that intersect James Avenue at point C as shown below, and below is a diagram, like a little map. And the question is, which is the measure of angle ACB, the angle formed by the park's 2 brick walls? I think this is a really nice moderate level question, and it assesses basic geometric knowledge. I think it's moderate simply because you have to put together 2 pretty basic pieces of information, but it's still not your standard arithmetic. So a student has to not only know about parallel lines and the relationships of the angles formed by parallel lines and transversals, but they also have to remember that some of the angles that form a line sum to 180. And as you can see with this one, I think the numbers let's say the numbers indicated is moderate level with 59% getting the correct answer. And again, another reason I like it, really good context and very simple enough that the problem itself doesn't get buried in all the words. This is a great example from the Texas STAR grade 10 geometry test. This is an example of an advanced level question, I think. It's really only asking for perimeter, which is a standard geometry standard or objective. However, in this case, the student has to first of all, find the perimeter of a composite figure. And the composite figure, it's not clearly labeled for you, so they have to use a lot of their prior knowledge, which is isosceles right triangles and the relationships of the sides, in addition to what they know about perimeter, put it all together. And so this may be considered too challenging, like perhaps it doesn't measure the standard, can a kid find perimeter? But I think this would be considered a discriminating question in a good way, because this really will delineate your advanced student from the rest. And I don't have the data on how many actually got it right, but the problem goes like this. When viewed from above, the base of a water fountain has the shape of a hexagon composed of a square and 2 congruent isosceles right triangles as represented in the diagram below. Which of the following measurements best represents the perimeter of the water fountain's base in feet? And the other thing that's nice about this, so in addition to just composite, right triangles, perimeter, everything, the options are given, so the student has to be pretty conversant algebraically with radical notation. Okay, so those were 3 great examples of items, and now I've got 3 not so great examples. The first one is a low-level example, and it reads, a package of 12 water bottles sells for $3.89. The manager of a stadium spent a total of $287.86 on bottles of water. Which of the following is closest to the number of bottles of water the manager bought? I think this is not so good for a couple of reasons. Aside from the fact it's arithmetic at the 10th grade level, which I still think could be legitimate, I think this item lacks precision, particularly because, well, for 2 reasons. The first one is it talks about the package of water bottles is in 12s, but then it talks about the manager buying water bottles, and it never really qualifies. We have to make that leap that the manager bought them in boxes of 12. We don't know that. It's not spelled out. So it may be pedantic, but it's enough to get you in trouble probably if somebody didn't graduate for it. I think the other reason it doesn't really, that it lacks precision has to do with, I don't think there was good fact checking done on this. That's another thing that'll slow kids down in a real type of assessment, especially high stakes. A 12-pack of water bottles for $3.89 may be true in some parts of the country, but there are parts where you can get 24 bottles for less than $4 as well. And I think even your savvier kids would be thinking, how come the stadium manager can't get a volume discount? And so for that reason, I think that a lot of stuff masks what's supposed to be a really simple item. Okay, my next example of a not so good item, this one at the intermediate level, comes from one of the Virginia released SOLs, yes, unfortunate acronym, stands for Standards of Learning, and of course Algebra 1 exams. And this item reads, in addition to an $80 bonus, Joan earned $8 per hour working last week. Joan's total earnings last week were $240. How many total hours did she work last week? And then the options are variety for how many hours she worked, the answer, if you will. I don't like this question for a couple reasons. Actually, I think the standard it's supposed to be addressing for an Algebra 1 course would be, can a student model real-world situations with a basic linear equation? This falls short of that because although the context is good and you're not going to lose the point of the item in the context, the options turn this from an algebra question into an arithmetic question that probably any 5th or 6th grader could answer without knowing any algebra. So I think the way I would fix this, because this is easily turned into a good item, would be just to change the options to linear equations in the form y equals mx plus b, or up the challenge a little bit, maybe just make it 4 options, linear equations of the form ax plus by equals c. And I think that would take it from a not so good to a good item. Okay, and my last example of an item, this one's advanced in the not so good category, comes from the 2005 released Wisconsin Knowledge and Concepts Examination. It's a CRT, Criterion Reference Test, and this was for grade 10. And this is just kind of an embarrassment to me, as you'll find out part of my background is I used to write test items. But first of all, I have problems with this because this is basic arithmetic, and this is listed as a 10th grade constructed response. This isn't even A, B, C, D, or E. This is, they're supposed to write an answer for it. So I think and why is it considered advanced? I didn't call it advanced. Interestingly enough, when you look at Wisconsin's test define, they have this labeled with a depth of knowledge, which is a gauge, I think, that education people use to describe how complex a task is. They call this a depth of knowledge of 3, which actually reads in the book, students demonstrate an understanding of complex ideas, draw conclusions based on this understanding, and communicate ideas and conclusions effectively. Let me read you this problem and you tell me if this is complex task and demonstrates complex understandings for a 10th grader. Carla is mowing lawns to earn money for a used car that costs $1,500. Carla's parents have agreed to contribute $1 for every $1 she saves. Carla saves $10 from each lawn she mows. Carla mows 3 lawns per week. Carla estimates that with her parents' help, she should be able to purchase the car in 20 weeks. In the box below, explain whether or not Carla's estimate is accurate. Use mathematics to explain your answer. You may use words, calculations, or diagrams in your explanation. Well, okay, let's add one more thing to the list that occurred to me as I read it, okay? How about the fact that what kid who's taken this test is going to think that some used car is still going to be available 20 weeks from now? So it's just ridiculous on a lot of levels. And I just find the idea of using a constructed response item for arithmetic at the 10th grade level and actually classifying it for the public to see as having a depth of knowledge rating of 3 is just ridiculous. The item in and of itself, is it really bad? No. It's a decent item for about 5th grade, and I don't even think it would be advanced there. And that's all I got to say about that not so good item. And again, my name is Stephanie Sawyer, and I'm really excited about working with Khan Academy on this project. And so just to know where I'm coming from, I've been a math teacher since I think my earliest job was like 1992 or something. I taught middle school math. I usually teach in Catholic schools, although I've had experience in public school as well. I did a brief stint for about 5 years where I took a job with Harcourt Assessment as a content specialist. And we were later bought by Pearson, so it's, Harcourt / Pearson is who I worked for. Spent 5 years, and you probably guessed, since I really liked those FCAT items in my good examples, I actually worked on the FCAT project, and I was very proud of that product. So I feel like I bring an interesting array of skills to the table in that I have actual classroom experience. I kind of get to see what does work, what questions. I mean, I've written a ton and I've borrowed a ton, and I feel like I have a sense of which questions really give good feedback on if a student has learned what you wanted him to or not. And with my experience as an item writer and content specialist in the testing industry, I think that I've gotten a little better at narrowing the focus. If you notice during my talk on those 6 items, I would often try to address what was the standard what was the standard the item was written to, and was it measuring that, as opposed to just being a good question? Because I think that's really the thing. You want these questions to give you information about if a student has learned. Well, you got to make sure you're asking a question that'll actually measure what you're trying to find out. And so that's basically my background with what qualifies me to do, I think, write some items and do some content work in mathematics, having both classroom and corporate, I guess, experience in education as well. Thanks for taking the time to watch this, and I look forward to hearing from y'all. And this is Stephanie Sawyer signing off from my room in a Catholic school in Salt Lake City, Utah.